This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to downrigger@montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thanks so much, Manny, for that wonderful introduction. And as he said, I am Downrigger Dale, and we are the Montana Outdoor Podcast. And I've got a real treat for you guys. You may remember, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we had talked about Mack Days, probably the most unique fishing tournament. In fact, in the podcast description, I even put in there, it was a behind-the-scenes look at the most unique fishing tournament in the world. And it truly is. And we talked with Cindy Benson, and she went through all the inner workings. We went behind the scenes with the biologists there, and it was just fascinating. But as Fall Mack Days approaches very soon here, I thought, let's revisit this, but let's do it from the perspective of the contestant, the fisherman, the men and women that get out there and compete in this tournament. So I was able to trick a couple guys into coming here. They thought they were going to come here to get money, but then they realized they're just going to have to talk to me. No, and that is actually Cindy's husband, Mike Benson, and then Scott Bombard. And Scott has been on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show before. You may have seen him do some seminars around at various areas, and these two guys do a lot of fishing. They are what I would call very active competitors in Mack Days. So you're going to learn, if you want to go to that level, which if you've got the time, after listening to these guys, I think you're going to want to give that a try. And then we'll also talk about more of the passive contestant, the one that likes to kind of come and go on the tournament and how that works. In the podcast description, I'm going to give you some emails. I'm going to give you some links to information, all that. If none of that pacifies you, you've got my email. Manny gave it to you before we started the show. He'll give it to you again at the end. You can always email me, and I'll get in touch with whoever you need, and we'll get you the answers. So let's start to my left here on your, would probably be your left or right speaker. I'm not sure how you're listening, but here's Scott Bombard. Scott, welcome to the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. And on the right is Mike Benson. Mike, thanks for coming to the podcast here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We appreciate the opportunity to get some information out to these folks, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Now, let's start first with a few of the basics. Mike, what are the dates for Fall Mack Days? That's right around the corner, isn't it?
Yeah, it starts a week from today, which is the 14th of September, and runs through the 12th of November. So it's a 9-week tournament, and they've got it set up now that you can fish every day if you want to for 9 weeks. That's a little hard on us old guys, but we're stumbling through it. So.
And so as far as the mechanics of it go, the one of the more unique sides of Mack Days is that, you think of a tournament as like a weekend deal, and everybody shows up and out you go and you fish, and then they do the weigh-in, and either 1 day or 2 day tournament, and you find out who the winner is. This goes, as you said, for 9 weeks, and it allows the people to come and go as they please. They don't have to fish every day. Explain how that works.
Well, that's basically the scenario. It's set up a little better than it used to be. We fished the last 10 days in a row, and that was a little bit of a grinder. And really, the 9 weeks, if you're fishing all the time, it gets to be a little grinder. But it's nice that you can take days off if you want to, and it's nice. They've got a real nice setup over there at Blue Bay for camping. And there's probably, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 10 or 12 guys that stay there. It's a little more active in the spring tournament because there's a few more fishermen that fish that, because there's a lot of guys in the fall that are either hunting or they have some other glitch going on. So, it's just a nice setup they have, and we've been doing it long enough. I think they started this in 2002, and I've been fishing it since 2005. So this would be like my 38th tournament in a row. So
wow, 38 in a row.
Yeah.
But the people can kind of all they have to do, and by the way, this is on Flathead Lake in northwest Montana. For those of you that didn't catch the first podcast, that's where it's located. And Flathead Lake is a unbelievable lake, and we'll get into some of the reasons why these two gentlemen love to do it. But before I get to Scott here, Mike, as far as how do they register? How do folks get involved in the tournament to be able to compete?
Cindy's got a thing set up. It's just I'm thinking it's just an email.
Yeah, if you go to the Mack Days tournament website.
Right. It's mackdays.com, and you can get the information off of a link there. So you can just send in your entry to her, and then she puts you in the computer. And there's no cost for that or anything. So that's another nice thing about this tournament. There's no entry fee. You just show up and fish whenever you want to. And if you're not registered and you catch fish, you can just come in and she'll register you when she checks your fish in. So
yeah, so it makes it easy. You can kind of come and go in the tournament as you please. There's lots of ways to win. Scott, let's talk a bit about that. Number one, what motivated you to decide, okay, I'm not only going to fish in this twice a year tournament, but I'm going to be really active in it. What bug bit you to decide to dedicate so much time to this tournament and get involved? Is this probably a pretty decent amount of money a guy could make in the tournament, but tell us why you got involved in it.
For me, getting involved in this tournament was one of those things that I just really wanted something to do after I retired.
Yeah.
And I've been fishing my whole life, but I realized that I saw some flyers around town and started asking about it. Next thing I know, I'm up at Blue Bay and I'm talking to Cindy and I'm going to do this. And then next thing I know, I bought a little boat and I went out. And once you start getting dialed in and you meet the right people, and you get people that will help you and kind of guide you along. And it takes a little while to do that because they want to know if you're really serious or you're just picking their brain for no reason whatsoever and you're never going to see them again. But I think after a while they realized I really wanted to do this, so I did get help, and that's really important. And that's what these things, podcasts and seminars are about. But for me, it was one of those, once you start doing this and becoming a little successful, it's in your blood. You can't turn it off. And you start building inventory, rods and tackle, and boats get bigger, and you start to really get involved in the whole process and why we're doing this, what the possibilities are, and the friends and the people that you meet. And I mean, these guys are my brothers now. I mean, I've been doing this since 2008, and it just becomes a family. Yeah. So it's an automatic assumption that you'll be there and you'll be doing your thing and trying to produce numbers as best you can, and relying on your experience and trying to help other people get.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've noticed about Mack Days is it really kind of, like you're saying, kind of becomes a brotherhood. And for someone that wants to retire, we all work hard. And we come to that time that okay, we're now going to get out there and retire and then what do? We sit and end up doing nothing. And I think that's how retired people become old people.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's very dangerous. You just need to stay active.
Exactly. And so here's a way to be retired, but get into something that you're going to love. And that's the passion that happens is here you started out, you really didn't have things set up yet. You weren't sure what to do. And next thing you know, you're an old hand and now you're helping other people. Mike, you talk about the campground in Blue Bay and how people kind of gather there, the ones that compete on a pretty regular basis on Mack days. And I mean, is it kind of like one of those deals where you all sit around at night and tell about the one that got away, but then also give some advice to each other and that?
Yeah, it's I think part of the thing after we started doing this for a while was the camaraderie thing. The competition thing kind of took a back seat to the camaraderie thing. And, everybody that's, camped there and those guys are all, top 20 fishermen. So it's not like there's any big secrets. And that's what my brother Jerry, that's always his big joke is everybody wants to know what the secret is. And he said, hey, he says, you know what the secret is? And somebody will say, no, what? He'll say, there's no secret. This is just about going out and doing it. After you get dialed up on it, there is no secret. It's just about going out there and doing your job,
Mm-hmm. Well, and, obviously there's skill. You have to learn what to do and when to do it. And we'll get into some of the mechanics of that. But there is luck involved as well, correct?
Yeah, certainly. Part of it is, you start out every day and you got it in your mind where you want to go and what you're thinking is going to happen there. And, some days you land on them and some days you don't. And then those days are the frustrating ones, but it's, you come back the next day and you're revived and you're ready to do it again. It gets to be a little bit of a grinder for 9 weeks, but, by the end of the tournament, you're saying, geez, I hope this thing gets over pretty soon. But as soon as it's over for a week, you're redialing for the next one. So
yeah, then you're going, gee,
like Scott said, it's a bit of an addiction once you get into it, and we've been doing it a long time. So,
well, there's $200,000 in cash and prizes that are up for grabs on this fall Mack days. Now, how does that break out? Are you going for the number of fish or weight, or explain how that works? Scott, I'll let you jump in there on that one.
It's all about numbers.
Okay,
plain and simple. This tournament is the most well-ran tournament I've ever seen and ever been part of. I mean, there's no waste whatsoever in this tournament. But your goal is to go out and catch as many fish as you can.
As many of the lake trout, or what they often refer to on Flathead as the Mackinaw.
As many Macks as you can catch. And you just keep them on ice and you bring them in, you turn them in, they count them, they register that number. Those fish get processed and the waste is not, it's just amazing because the waste goes to animal rehab centers and they just don't waste anything. And that's what's amazing to me.
And they process the fish and then that gets sold.
It gets sold, yes.
Yeah.
Some gets donated to food banks. It's unbelievable what they actually do with this resource. There's just nothing out there like it. It's not like we're catching 5 fish and then go back and put them back in the lake and then do another tournament in another place. We're trying to thin them out, and we got to turn them in, and we got to keep them cold. And
is there a slot limit? I mean, is there a certain size that you need to get?
The smallest fish you can catch is money fish. So if it's a lake trout and it's 4 inches long, you're going to be pretty much in the money there because they have a prize for the two smallest fish, and they have a prize for the largest fish, which is any large fish over 20 pounds under On the south half of the lake, you have no limit as far as size goes, which is a kind of a thing that's starting to show up now, where they've been tagging fish for so many years that some of these fish that we're catching on the south half of the lake that has no slot limit, or even on the north half of the lake where there is a slot fish, it's over 36 inches. That you're supposed to release. But some of these fish we're catching are over 30 inches, but still have a tag in them from years ago. And you can still get paid for that fish. It doesn't count towards your number, depending on where you caught it. But that's why I'm saying this tag fish program is unbelievable. But when you're trying to catch as many fish as you can, that small one counts, that big one counts, and everything in between, you keep, turn in, and get paid for.
Okay. And what are the rules, Mike, as far as equipment goes? Is there certain rules as far as what kind of bait you can use, tackle, things like that?
Yeah, there is. There's you can't use any kind of a salmonoid for bait.
Okay.
So that's pretty clear cut. Most of it is that they're using is northern pike minnow and that type of a fish that's in that lake. So peamouth and different stuff. Some of the guys are using perch bellies, which is you can't use the whole thing, but if it's a waste part of the product, you can use that as a bait. But you can't use any whitefish. You can't use any Mackinaw.
Yeah, so kind of typical of a lot of the Montana rules. You can't use any sport fish for bait.
Correct.
Okay. How about as far as hooks and that sort of thing?
Okay, you're allowed to fish with 2 poles, and you can have 2 hooks per pole.
Okay.
A lot of stuff we're running is, we're running, like if we're jigging, you're using a lead jig of some kind, and above it, anywhere from 12 to down to 8 inches, we're running a specialized fly. It's called a Mack fly. Mm-hmm. And so you can have, or you can run 2 jigs or 2 flies. So, any combination of 2 poles with 2 hooks.
Okay.
And the treble hook counts as 1 hook. So, and the flies are a single hook. So.
Okay. So that gives you kind of the basics there. And then as far as the numbers go, so we're paid per fish, correct?
Yes.
And then
100.
Up to what?
100.
The limit is 100 per day.
100 per day.
Yep.
So you're getting paid. And how much per fish are you?
Well, the more fish you catch, the higher the number is. And I would say, just ballpark, if you're over 1,200 fish, those fish are probably in the neighborhood of $4.50 to $5 a fish.
Woo!
So
wow!
I don't know exactly what the number was, but the kid that won the spring tournament had, what do you have, 2,500 fish, give or take some, 24 something maybe. So his bonus check was
16,000 or something like that.
I think it was
Holy
closer to 12,000.
smokes.
So
Yeah. See, and that's the part I don't think people realize. We hear about these big numbers for, like the Governor's Cup Walleye tournament and that, but this tournament actually kind of dwarfs all of them far
part
as
of it is just the extended time we get on it too.
Yeah, and that's
every
true.
tournament's
Yeah.
different. The spring tournament's a deep water vertical jigging thing, and the fall tournament's more of you could still catch fish jigging, and they do, but those fish, the lake trout spawn in the fall, so you can catch bigger fish in shallower water, which is for me it's way more fun. So.
Yeah. So, and we'll get into the mechanics a little bit too, So we've got lots of different ways to win fish. The biggest one, of course, or to win money. The biggest one, of course, is numbers. And for those of you that are going, wait a minute, what's happening here? Why do they want so many fish out? Well, the lake trout is not native to Flathead Lake.
That's correct.
And so the idea is to reduce those numbers to get the native fish, which are the
Bull
bull trout
and the West Slope cutthroat.
Yeah, and those two were originally the main fish in the lake.
Correct.
From the time way before any of us were around, and the native people were there. The tribes relied on those fish a great deal.
Yes.
And so now they're trying to return the lake back to this and get that balance back. If you want to know how all that happened, listen to the podcast about Mack days that we did before, and you'll hear all the science on it. I won't get into that one because it's a long story, but it was a disastrous effect.
I think that, it's a little bit of a misnomer in the fact that they say they're not trying to crash
get rid of all of them.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make it kind of equal a little bit. So those native fish have a little better chance at survival. And I think that's, a lot of people think, well, they're just trying to make them all go away. And that's not a fact at all. So
no,
it's a reduction thing. So.
And that's the other unique part about this tournament that I have never heard any tournament do is, here you have an issue from a biological standpoint. Science says, we've got to reduce these numbers in that. And so how do we do it as this, as the tribe and Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, how do we fix this? Well, what's unique about this tournament is they said, let's let the fishermen do it, and let's let them have some fun doing it. I've never heard of that. Have you ever heard of solving a biological problem in our lakes or rivers this way?
No, I think, and that's why it makes this tournament unique, in the fact that that's, we're involved on the conservation part of that and the, getting back to, the tribe wants to be proactive, and they are, and the state's been on board with this as well. So, it's for us guys that are fishing, it's a win-win. So,
yeah, you're doing some dang good about it, but also having a lot of fun. Now, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll chat about one of our great sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to get into the technique side of it. For those of you that want to fish this tournament, you want to definitely stick around and pay close attention here, because you're going to learn a lot about how to do this to really be a top competitor from two of the most successful competitors out there when we come back right after this. Hey, gang, it just seems like yesterday we were sitting in the heat going, ooh, this is a hot summer. What are we going to do? And we were worried about forest fires and all that. But now, all of a sudden, you feel that little tinge in the air, the crispness, and it won't be long, folks. The snow is going to fly. This is the time. If you've ever thought about getting a snowplow so you can get that driveway of yours plowed, or let's say you own a business. A lot of you need to plow that out. You can save a ton of money plowing it yourself. And I kind of think it's fun. I enjoy doing it. But the reason I'm talking about all this is Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is your Boss snowplow dealer. And Boss snowplows, I think, has just now taken it to a whole another level. They are the snowplow that you want to have. They can do so many different things. And the great thing about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is they have a full service department. They can install it. They can take you through it, show you how to operate your Boss snowplow. They can help you get financing. They have the parts. They have everything. This isn't something where, you get a snowplow and then you have problems with it or whatever, and the people that sold it to you, that's all they do is sell it. They don't know anything. Not with Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They not only do they carry the best snowplowers you can get, Boss snowplows, but they do everything from helping you pick the right one all the way through to the service after sale and all that. So get a hold of my friends at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Now, you can go see them in person in Missoula, Montana, 5680 Expressway in Missoula. Also, you can, of course, give them a call. They'd love to talk to you there. Their phone number, 406-549-4243. 3. Or one of my favorite ways to take a look at everything they have is just go online, rmtte.com, rmtte.com, Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Be ready for winter this year with a Boss snowplow and check out all their inventory on everything else. You're going to like dealing with these folks. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. And we are back here talking about Fall Mack Days. That is coming up real soon. If you folks have never, ever done this, you are definitely going to want to get on board. This starts on September 14th. It goes to November 12th on Flathead Lake. I'm going to have all the links in the podcast description there for you so you can click on the website, get all the details, get registered, get up there and have fun. Mike Benson is with me. Scott Bombard is with me, and we're talking about competing in this tournament. So let's talk about how you guys compete. Scott, I assume that you fish a little different during spring Mack days and fall Mack days. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so talk a bit about what your... Let's first talk about where you find the fish on fall Mack days. Where typically do you, when you set out to say, okay, I'm going to go catch 100 fish today if I can,
right?
Where do you head to?
Well, you got to make a choice every day in the fall, because in the fall we have a whole new dynamic. In the spring, it's pretty much a jigging thing. That's pretty much what it is. People do some trolling, but it's not as productive as it is in the fall. In the fall, you can troll, because these fish are starting to move up into the shallows. Lake trout spawn in the fall. Mm-hmm. So they'll move up into the shallows. You start getting these bigger fish. They cast, they troll, and they jig. So you got guys that are just focused on jigging. That's all they do. They're not going to pull off jigging. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. And then you have guys that over the last 5-10 years started discovering that we could cast from shallow into deeper water and actually catch lake trout and catch numbers of lake trout casting, which is exhausting. But it's a blast, because we're dealing with fish jigging that we're down in depths of 200 feet, 250 feet. Sometimes you obviously have braided line and all the gear. We'll talk about that. But casting, you can use mono, and it's on. I mean, it's a whole different world when you hook up a 6-8 pound lake trout on a spinner. It's nothing like reeling up a 10-inch fish from 250 feet.
I can speak to that for sure. I lived on Flathead Lake when I retired and moved back to Montana. And I went up there to lick my wounds a bit, and I lived right on the lake. And so I thought one day, why not just, I got some stuff to do, so I can't go out on the boat, but why not just, and it was a fall day, just cast off the dock. I had no idea that you could catch, and here this 15-pound lake trout gets a hold of me, and I was out there the whole day because it was just a blast. So it can be done from shore. I assume doing it from boat gives you a lot more flexibility.
I even know guys that go out there, and they'll go out back in the day before Bird Island burned. They'd go out on Bird Island and park the boat at one end, go to the other end, and fly fish and just strip streamers in the fall and just go nuts. Casting is a new dynamic, but it's a dynamic that's been around for a long time. Most guys fishing Mack days didn't really know about it that much because we're so focused on jigging for Macks. But that's not the only way to catch them. You can catch them trolling, you can catch them jigging, and you can catch them casting in the fall.
All right, Mike, which way do you prefer to do it? Is there a favorite way, or do you change it up a lot? What do you do?
He's the casting king.
Oh, he's the casting king.
Yes, he is.
The spring, like Scott said, the spring tournament is strictly for us guys that are competing, is a deep water vertical jigging thing, and that tournament is not that it's the dynamic is different, like he said, but it's pretty straightforward. and you're doing the same thing all the time. The fall one is a nice mixture because you control if you want to, and you can jig because those fish that are not spawning are going to be in the same spots all year long. So, and they're going to be smaller fish. So those guys are still successful jigging in the fall Mack days. But, the lake trout has the serious advantage in that lake that he spawns in the lake, and the native fish have to go up the river to spawn. So, the biomass in the lake between the lake trout and the whitefish is monstrous, probably 80 or 90% of the, you'd have to talk to the scientists, but, it's not like we're going to fish that lake out. It's a huge lake. So I do think that they are reducing the number a little bit, and we see that. We're catching more bull trout, and I have caught some cutthroat that are sizable.
Yeah, and you don't keep those, obviously.
No, those go right back in the lake. And sometimes you hope that, when you get them up to the boat, that they just get away and you don't have to deal with them. So, but
yeah, you want to be careful, folks. If you do, learn a bit on how to identify your fish. That's
critical.
Key. So make sure you do that. Not hard to do. You'll learn that real quick. There is a pretty striking difference between these fish, so you should be able to figure that out pretty well. But when you have the bull or cutthroats, treat them with tender love and care and get them back in the water right away. So what do you prefer to do? Do you like to cast mostly in the fall?
I do. In the fall it starts out, and it's going to be a little different dynamic this year because the lake is down almost 2.5 feet, and we don't know how that's going to affect us, on the fishing part of it, and if it's going to affect us at all. Every tournament's a little bit different, but this is going to be a new dynamic this year just because of the water level. But yeah, I like the casting thing. The first 2 or 3 weeks of the fall tournament is pretty predominantly a jigging thing, and then when those fish start to gravitate to the shallower water, it turns into a trolling and casting thing. So that's and it's just one of those things that if you do it long enough, you get proficient at it. And for me, it's a lot more fun. It's bigger fish in shallower water, and it's a different animal.
So what do you use when you're casting for these? Talk a little bit about what size tackle are you using, what size pole and line do you use?
As far as the terminal end of it, for me it's just a couple of things. We're either using a spoon. The lake trout like the vibrant colors, so something that's bright, or even the silver and the brass. But if it's got color on it, it doesn't really matter. Anywhere from 3/4 to an ounce is probably the normal weight, and then MEPS makes a spinner called a Flying C, and that's comes in 2 sizes, 5/8 and 7/8 of an ounce, and we have a lot of success. I do on that spinner.
Okay,
and that's again, pinks, oranges, greens, anything that's bright, and it's got that. I like the brass blade myself a little more, but on the shiny days you can run that silver blade. So. And for me, and Scott will get into this a little bit different, our tackle is a bit different, especially in the spring. But like when he's jigging, he's using a spinning rod, and I'm using a bait caster. So, but in the fall, when I get into this the casting thing, I'm strictly using a spinning rod, and like anywhere from a 7-foot to a 7.5-foot rod, medium to medium heavy, kind of depending on.
What pound test are you using?
I'm still using braid either way that I'm fishing. Scott's gone to a little more of a mono thing when he's casting in the fall, but 15-pound braid with a 14 or 12-pound fluorocarbon leader.
And how long's your leader usually?
It kind of varies. I don't think, in reality, you could probably tie directly to your braid because those fish are so voracious that they'll eat basically anything, and so, but it's anywhere from 18 inches to 4 feet, basically. Okay. And I don't think, when you're running a spinner, you're not running anything else off of that. I'm just running a naked spinner, no bait, no fly.
And what kind of presentation you do? So you're casting from the boat towards shore. Is that correct?
You can do
it
either way. There's the guys have different techniques about what they like to do. I think for Scott and I, it's more of a shallow water to deep water casting thing.
Okay.
But there's guys that are just the opposite, that think that, if you're sitting in a little deeper water, and really I think it's immaterial because you're trying to hit that break. There's a break between the blue water and the green water. And for me, most of the time, that's 30 feet.
Okay. So Scott, how do you, so you're going from shallow to deep, going from that green to the blue?
Yep.
Okay. And do you let it sink a bit and then start to bring it back?
Get it out as far as you possibly can. We count them down. This is a very rocky lake. If you have a lot of money and a lot of spinners, let it hit the bottom. But I count them down to 12, 15, and then I normally, if I'm throwing a flying C, I'll load it real quick, and then I just start to bring a slow retrieve. Mm-hmm. And when they hit it, it's just on.
And it's just a slow, steady retrieve?
Yep.
Okay, no bouncing
Slower
on
is
that?
better.
Just
no, just nice and slow.
Okay.
And when they come up, I mean, sometimes you're right at the boat, and that thing almost comes out of the water to grab it.
Yeah, and isn't that true? So often that fish will do that. They follow it. They're figuring out, what is this? Should I go for it? Should I not? And then they see it starting to go up on them, and they go,
they're like
now or never.
They're like rockets under there sometimes. And when you really get on a bite casting, you literally have to catch 4 or 5, take a break. There's just no way. Your arm is just burning because you're catching the spawners. You're catching 4 or 5 pounds, sometimes 10 pound, 12 pound fish.
Yeah, on fairly light tackle here. So this is a fight.
I use mono because I like that little bit of stretch when they hit it, so I'm not just ripping it out of their mouth.
And what pound test mono are you using?
I run 14 pound, 12 to 14 pound mono.
Okay.
And I like a little bit of that stretch because I don't like ripping them that hard, but either way, they have a very tough, hard, toothy mouth, and once you set it, you're hooked up. But it's amazing how many you lose too.
Yeah. Now, do you need to set the hook hard, or are they pretty much setting themselves?
I set them hard. I mean, when that thing hits, I just lay back into it and then keep them loaded, and I don't just horse them in. Mm-hmm. None of these lake trout really that we hook up. The ones on the bottom that we're catching jigging, we don't really want to just horse them up because they get bloated so bad.
Right, yeah, you're bringing them up from some really deep water.
And the ones we're catching when we're casting, they're going to, you kind of just, your brain kind of like, I'm just really enjoying this fight.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But the thing about it is it's a battle, and it's going to be a battle right to the time you get that thing in the boat, and there's blood everywhere, and it just becomes a mess, and you're like, why am I doing this? And then you just cast it right back out and go again. But it's just part of the program, and it's been one of those things that's really been a lot of fun, because there's times when it's so bad on that lake that you could not get your boat to anchor in the wind. And we have an option. We can go find some calmer water and cast. That's what's nice about the lake, the fall tournament.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, the fall tournament gives you that option.
It's
where
an option.
If you're wanting to troll way out into the deeper water, if it's a windy day, you better have a real sizable boat, a strong stomach, and everything else, or you're going to have some problems out there. But the nice thing is to find that calm area where hey, that looks like some good spawning ground. That's going to bring them in, and you spot, lock, and go. And then when the weather gets better, you might go try something else.
I get a kick out of watching Mike, because when we get into this casting thing and he just gets dialed in, I can watch him, because I'll pretty much start out jigging every morning, unless the weather's really bad. But I'll try to hide behind a little island or whatever. But I'll watch Mike. And he'll blast back into the backside of Skidoo, and I'll just watch him as he goes, because he'll move 15, 20 times a day, finding these shallow areas. He has a method to what he does, and there is nobody that can catch fish casting like Mike. I mean, he's got it dialed in, but he's moving a lot.
Okay. Well, Mike, what prompts you to move? Because I know that can be. I do a lot of walleye fishing, and then this time of year do a lot of the king salmon fishing over on Fort Peck, and of course that's troll, and you're moving all the time. But some fishermen say no, you do your research, you stick to it. Others say no, I go till I feel I've played it out and go to the next. What prompts you to move?
Not catching fish.
So,
okay. if you go out there and for me, if I pull up on a spot, especially when it's later in the tournament and you know that those fish are in spawning, if you pull up on a spot and I don't catch something in 6 or 7 casts, I'm moving at least 50 feet one direction or the other, or I'm just moving to a new spot, until I find some fish. And it isn't like when you're casting that you're going to be able to sit on one spot all day and catch 100 fish. That's just not going to happen for you.
No, you're going to put them down too. There's so much activity that they'll go down for a while.
Yeah, because they're saying, wait a minute, I don't like all this stuff hitting the water and all that, so then it's time to move on. So now let's talk a bit about that, Mike. So when you start out in the morning, you're leaving Blue Bay, you're going out, do you use your electronics to say, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to find where the fish are. Once I'm on them, then I get started. Some people go, no, I got my spots. I'm going to start my spot, go from there, and if I'm having bad luck, I rely on my electronics. Which way do you go?
I think that when I start out in the morning, I have a spot in my head that I'm going to go to. All right, if I go there, it's turn your electronics on, see what's there, and if you're having any luck at all, you just play it until it's, you're not, and then you move along. From when we first started this tournament to where we are now, not to get off track too much here, but a couple of things have made this totally different. One is the upgrade in electronics, obviously, and one is the electric trolling motor. Those two things in particular for me, from where we started, when we first started, we were anchored on everything, and that was before the anchor ball where you could pull your anchor up. You had to pull it out of whatever depth you were in.
Yeah, that's when you need a real strong grandson or something that wants to pull it that far up. I got you.
Not fun at all.
Yeah. But it's so different now than it was, 15 years ago when we were first doing this, or even 20 for some of those guys. So it's gotten easier, but more expensive. So.
Mm-hmm. And so then you're utilizing electronics. Do you do any of the side imaging or any of that new stuff at all?
Yeah, some of that depends on what kind of water you're in. If you're in the spring and you're in 200 feet of water or something, it's more of a down imaging thing for me. And Scott could probably speak to this a little more because he's better with these electronics than I am. So, I'm just trying to target anything that shows me that there's some fish there and then go to work on them. But some of those guys, there's probably 3 or 4 guys in the top 20 that are really good with their electronics, and that gives them a little bit of an advantage. But for me, doing this as long as we have, it's pretty spot specific. So,
And when you're sitting at the campground in Blue Bay and you've had a real successful day, how guarded is it to say, where did you catch all those?
Well, like we said before, there's really no secret because, the fall tournament in particular is fished on the south half of the lake. So, you can see where everybody's at basically. And there's certain community spots that we have, everybody has their own little nuanced secret spots, but it's really not a secret, and everybody's been pretty good with everybody about, especially the guys that are doing this full time and have been doing it a while. You don't encroach on somebody if he's on some fish and working it.
Right.
It's the new guys that come along that want to think that that's the only spot in the lake that you're going to catch fish on, and they get a little closer than they need to.
Yeah.
You have to explain etiquette to them. So.
Etiquette and ethics is a big one for fishing, and it makes it so that you're not a lonely person at the campground, too. Right. You don't want to ostracize yourself.
Yeah,
so.
And everybody knows where everybody's at, basically, in the fall tournament. It's a little more spread out in the spring tournament, but still, it's not like you're fishing in the ocean where you can't see anybody. So.
Okay. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and then I want to get into trolling and what are some of the techniques and ideas for trolling, why you troll, and why you decide, nope, not going to troll, going to go back to casting or jigging. We'll do that right after this. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this podcast. You folks really make the difference here for us by tuning in, but we could not do what we do at all without great sponsors like Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Now, let me kind of fill you in on what's going on there with everybody. They have so many great things. For example, they have extraordinary flooring lines. Now, a lot of their flooring is made right there. They have this huge lumber yard full of all kinds of stuff. You just got to go see it in Missoula. You can go online and take a look at all the different flooring and that. But John and Corey and the rest of the gang, Superior Hardwoods, they've been in business since 1977. You don't stay in business that long by not doing it right. Go online to superior-hardwoods.com, and you can even read the reviews from everybody. You'll get a feel that these guys really know what they're doing. They strive so hard to make sure their customers are satisfied and get what they want. So back to the flooring. Go take a look at all the different things that they can do at Superior Hardwoods. Everything from flooring that will just blow you away, and that I guarantee they have flooring in there with woods you've probably never even seen before. Then you can even go into things that can accent that. You have got to see the alder molding they have there. Unbelievable. The list goes on and on. So go to Superior Hardwoods. That's superior-hardwoods.com. Take a look at what they've got going on there online. Then you have questions. Easy. Just give them a call, 406-251-2272. Or if you want, and I think you'll love going to the showroom, it's at 5120 Highway 93 South there in Missoula. I have just talked to so many people that go, you were talking on your podcast about these guys. Well, then we went and you weren't exaggerating, Downrigger. I mean, this place is amazing, and they know so much about it. As we like to put it, they will guide you through the woods at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. You got to go see them. Superior Hardwoods of Montana. That's superior-hardwoods.com. Oh, you're going to like these folks. You're going to love the way your house is going to look when they get done with it. Go see them. And thank you so much to our great sponsors here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Scott Bombard, Mike Benson are with me here. We're talking about Fall Mack Days. Fall Mack Days is going to be here before you know it. September 14th to November 12th is the tournament. Now, you can be like my two guests and fish it pretty much every day. Or you can say, I'm going to dip my toes in this a little bit, and I'm just going to go up and see how many fish I can catch, maybe once every other weekend or whatever. It's up to you. Idea is, one, help them thin out the lake trout population. Two, have some fun. Meet your friends. Get the family out. Get together and get out on the lake. In my humble opinion, I think fall is probably the most gorgeous time you can be on Flathead Lake. That's just my opinion. Now, Scott Bombard, let's talk a bit about trolling. I know some people, I'm kind of a fan of trolling. I think it's just because I know more about it. I like working the downriggers, so that's I kind of got that nickname because I'm a freak for downriggers. I just love how they work. But tell me, when do you decide, I gotta bag off casting or jigging? This seems to be a day for trolling. What dictates that?
Well, like any day during Mack Days, weather dictates a whole thing.
Yeah.
Like Mike said, when we go out in the morning, normally we can keep our boats in the slips at Blue Bay during the fall tournaments, which is really great because we can get out in the boat, back her up, and go. Put our finger in the wind, see what's going on. If the lake's calm, make our plan. Mm-hmm. But the lake weather is going to be a big factor every day in what we're going to do. But if I go out and I decide, well, I'm going to do some trolling, then I'm going to run the downriggers, which are pretty much essential. Back in the day, I wouldn't say he's old, but back in the early days, Mike, they used to use steel line and all that way.
Yeah,
back,
I did too when I first started fishing Mack. Yeah.
There's not a lot of guys doing that because of the downriggers. So we have downriggers and downrigger balls, and we drop them down. I've actually done pretty good just running my downrigger down. I identify humps and rises in the shallower areas, and I run the downriggers down to where I'm just above those, and then I run a Vibrex spinner behind the downrigger 20, 30 feet and just cruise along, and they just hammer it.
Do you, is there like kind of an average depth that you tend to be at in the fall?
I find that if you can get those rises that come up to where you're 60 feet down to the top of the risers, a few places on the lake where you can.
So you've got maybe some points coming out where you
exactly, and you can cruise along the edges of those. Electronics are essential in the trolling situation because Flathead does have a lot of undulation under there. So to target fish, you can see them on the screen, so you know they're at 60, 70 feet or 100 feet. There's guys out there that drop them downriggers to the bottom, raise them up a foot,
and let her rip,
and just go and follow contours, and they get it dialed in. One of the guys out there, that's what he does. I mean, he's just one of the best trolling guys out there. But he can
in the fall with this the spawn happening, do you tend to troll much closer to shore than you would in the spring?
Yeah.
Okay.
Off the edges, off of points, off of over humps, anywhere you can get a little bit more shallow water and some structure under there, that's where those fish are. And they just troll right on the edges of them.
And what would be your go-to lure for trolling?
I use a number 5 Vibrex in a chartreuse.
Vibrex chartreuse.
But you can troll a spoon. You can troll wobble glows. There's guys that use cowbells, beer cans with a snubber on it, and flatfish. The
T50 flatfish and some of those kind of things. Yep. Yeah. And in any other kind of specialized equipment, do you use a lot of flashers, anything like that, or
some guys do use flashers? Some guys use wobblers. Some use flashers. For me, I run my stuff clean as I can.
Okay.
I run the rod down. I run the downrigger ball down. I run my line 40 feet behind the boat, 30 feet behind the boat, just bare spinner. That's it.
Okay. And what kind of line and first of all, what kind of rod are you using for this kind of trolling?
I use a 7-foot medium heavy. Pretty much a medium heavy rod has got to be used in all this type of fishing on Flathead because you got to have the backbone if you're jigging. You got to have the backbone if you're trolling.
You're dealing with big fish.
And you could be dealing with a 20, 30-pound fish at any moment. But when I'm trolling, I'll run my trolling rods, which are a casting rod. Or actually, it's a casting reel with a line counter on it, which is essential for me because I want to know how far down I am and how far out I am.
Out back, yep.
So I use the counter on the downrigger to go down to 40 feet, and I know I've got 30 feet of line out behind the boat. I hook it up to the downrigger, go down to 30 feet, and I'm at the depth I need to be at, and I just run it with braid and a fluorocarbon leader.
Okay. So you're fairly light tackle even in this case.
It is.
Yeah. And as far as on the release on your downriggers, do you run that pretty heavy, pretty tight, or is it a fairly light release on that?
I use the Scotty releases, and it's just pretty light. I mean, when you're just running a spinner, there's not a lot of weight. Now, there's some guys that run the cowbells. That just adds a lot of weight. So it's a fatigue factor when you start doing that kind of stuff too. And if it's just one person in the boat, trolling can be very, very difficult and hard to do all day long. But if you have another person in the boat, a husband-wife team or whatever, then they can switch off and work together. And you can run that heavier equipment. But for me, being alone in my boat, and it's a 22-foot boat, so it's not easy to control.
Yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on there.
I do.
Yeah.
And so I want as little as possible going on back there. And when that fish gets on, I want to be able to get it out of the, if it doesn't release, I'll release it and get it to the boat as fast as I can and get it back out and keep on going.
And Mike, as far as on the trolling side of it, what is it that attracts you to trolling? What tells you I'm done with this casting business? I got to get to the trolling.
Yeah, and like Scott said, it's pretty weather dictated. If we're trolling, especially in the fall tournament, you get some windy days, and you're just looking for a little break on the lee side of an island or some mainland somewhere. My trolling thing's a little bit different than some of these other guys. Our best troller is named Terry Krogstad, and he's, like Scott said, he's running some heavier gear and some deeper water, but he's gotten really proficient at it. I have to, when I'm trolling, I have to slow my boat down when I catch a fish. He doesn't deviate. He might slow it down a little bit, but he's still pulling that fish at trolling speed, basically, when he brings it in.
What speed do you troll at?
Well, we're trying to target anything. My target is 1.8 to 2.8. I try to stay in that category.
Seems to be the sweet spot there.
Yeah, and I don't know how the rest of them do. We haven't really discussed that too much, but I think that's probably a fair parameter.
Seems like what most people do is right around that. I probably averages around 2, something around there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're trying to stay in that zone. Some days, you kind of have to let the fish dictate a little bit. Some days they'll take that thing real slow. Some days you can be going 3 miles an hour and still catch fish. It just kind of depends on
wind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is one thing, and that's the big issue on Flathead, being it's a big lake. Wind is the enemy for us.
Yeah, you really don't have a current issue there.
We do sometimes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you come across currents so much on Flathead?
Well, the current on Flathead is 9 times out of 10 under tow.
Okay.
And it's normally worse right after a big blow, like a big storm comes through. So it pushes all the water to one end of the lake. Well, it's like anything else. It wants to go back to where it came from. So you got these current, this undertow. I've gotten out there to go jig fishing, and you don't know. You don't see anything. As soon as you drop that jig down, you watch that line, and pretty soon you're a quarter of a mile behind your boat. You got a current. And it does happen, seems to me, more often now than it used to. But we do have current to deal with, and sometimes it makes a spot that we would normally do very well on unfishable.
Well, I know, like in the Great Lakes, they deal with currents big time, and they end up, putting a fish hawk on or something just to start to see where their speed underneath is and direction. Is it that bad on Flathead? Do you think that you need something like that, or no?
It's more for me when I'm jigging. I use an ounce jig, so if I'm not vertical, I'm not catching fish.
Right. You need to be vertical, no off to the side either way.
It doesn't work any other way. So if I get out there and I want to fish 189 feet of water, and I can't get to the bottom until I'm 50 feet behind the boat, it makes it very, very difficult. So I'm going to go find some place that doesn't have current. And you can do that. Mm-hmm. But there's some places on the lake that you cannot fish it when that current is in there. And it's all because 9 times out of 10, we've had a blow and it's blown for 3 or 4 days.
Move that water out, and now the water's trying to settle back where it goes.
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
I never, all the time I've spent on Flathead Lake, I guess I never realized it. Of course, I was trolling most of the time. Now, for people that say, okay, I want to give this a go, but And I like to troll, but I don't know if I want to invest in a real expensive downrigger. There are some options, but would a Dipsy diver work? Have you guys ever used those?
For me, and it's a little different for like Scott and Terry because they're using downriggers. But later in the tournament, if I'm trolling, I'm not using a downrigger. I'm either using a little banana weight or I'm just running that spinner naked in 30 feet of water. Those fish can see that, and they'll come 10 or 15 feet to get it.
Well, and I guess in the fall, they're all quite a bit shallower anyway.
Right, and I'm kind of targeting probably 30 feet and inside that when I call it flatlining. You just throw it out there and you give it 50 or 60 feet of line and just put it in the pole holder. And it's the same thing. We're running basically the same gear that we're casting with. It's either a spoon or a spinner.
So for folks that want to give this a try, fall Mack days might be a really good time to do that because you wouldn't have to invest in quite as much of the
especially later in the tournament.
Expensive.
You get in 4 or 5 weeks into the tournament. That's kind of my target for if I'm going to be doing some trolling and don't want to use downriggers. I'm just flatlining. From there to the end of the tournament would be a good time to get out there and try that if you're wanting to get dialed up without spending all that money for the downriggers and the rest of that gear that's involved. And I'm just the same thing that Scott said. I'm just using my spinning poles. I just put them in the I've got a couple of them that are 7.4, 7.6 long, and they work fine.
That's got to be just the best of both worlds because
it is the best of both worlds too, because if you're just learning to fish Flathead Lake in these tournaments, jigging will get on you. It's a very patience-oriented fishing tactic. I mean, you got to have patience. You got to be willing to go out there and fish dark to dark. Mm-hmm. And jigging isn't for everybody. I mean, you gotta stay focused and dialed in. And you might have to move a few times, but you're still just doing the same thing. Fall is great for people that are just learning to fish flathead because you can change up a little bit and do things a little different.
And find what works good for you.
Yeah, and the monotony's not as bad. Because I'm telling you, jigging for 12 hours a day can be a little monotonous.
Yeah, that's hard for me because I tend to get a little impatient at times, but so now I can sense one question that our podcast listeners are I can feel it. I always can feel that audience starting to say, "Go ahead and ask them." What kind of money can a guy make that fishes like you guys? That really puts the time and effort into it? Can a person make a living doing this tournament? Because there's a lot of money going on here. Mike?
I think if you're retired, which I'm not, but I try to be semi-retired, I guess I would say. But this is probably 50 or 60% of my yearly gross income, which is not a huge number. If I'm looking at $25,000 to $30,000. But then there's expenses on top of that. So, it's difference between net and gross. And like they always say, nets are for fish. So it's like hunting, you shoot the big bull and you say, well, he scored. And the guy says, well, what's the net? And I said, the net's for fish. So I just want the big number. So, I think that for me personally, it's been a little better for me than probably 95% of the guys. Money-wise, but it's just because I've had success doing it and I spend a lot of time on it. So, I think my target going into like a fall Mack days, if I can cash for 10 grand or better, I consider it a successful tournament for me.
Heck yeah.
So,
wow.
But not everybody. That's not a number for everybody,
Sure.
And like they say,
and don't expect that your first tournament, folks.
Right.
It's going to take a while.
I caught 2 fish the first tournament that I fished. So
and that's okay. That's how you start. That's how you learn.
That's what I told Cindy after I'd done it a couple of times. I said, hey, I either got to figure this out or I got to find something else to do, And it just, once you get to it and start doing it and get a little input, and like Scott said, find some people that'll give you the information. And I think him and I are both probably better than most of the people that are out there about giving information out. I have no problem And I give people gear all the time and try to get them dialed up.
He's the guy that I went to.
So when you were learning, that was your go-to guy.
I didn't even know him. I mean, I got to Blue Bay, and I go walking down the road a little bit, and there's this guy standing behind his white pickup truck. I had never even had a boat on Flathead Lake yet.
Uh-huh.
And I come around the front of his pickup truck, and he's at the back messing around with tackle and stuff like that. And I introduced myself, and he's looking at me. And from the minute we met, he's like, "Yeah," he said, "we'll help you out any way we can." And that's how this all got started for me. It was Mike Benson. Mm-hmm. I mean, I fished the next morning. His brother was sitting in Blue Bay, and I went out to Blue Bay because my motor wasn't working very good. Come to find out, Steve Benson was sitting there. I had no idea. I didn't even have an anchor in my boat. I had no idea what to do. Mike had showed me kind of some of the tackle and the things that they use. So I threw this jig on, and I'm sitting out there in Blue Bay, and I get this fish on, and it's just a huge slot fish. Mm-hmm. And I'm battling this thing. I'm like, oh, my gosh. And Steve's like, let him go. Let him go. It's a slot fish. And I'm like, what?
No way.
So from that moment on, these guys have been my brothers. That's the way it's always been since day one. And that's the whole idea behind seminars and podcasts and radio broadcasts is I got nothing that I won't tell anybody because I can have you sitting next to me in my boat and tell you exactly what to do. It's not going to do any good. You got to go spend the time, learn what works for you, and get them dialed in your own head. Nobody can do that for you.
Right.
Just time on the water.
Right. And just remember, our motto always is that the worst day of fishing is still better than the best day of working.
Yeah.
So enjoy it. Don't get frustrated. It's kind of like golf, where you get upset and you don't get the right. Nah, just you're out and you're having fun and you're enjoying it. And if you make some friends there at Blue Bay, you're going to learn. How about you as far as bringing in some cash for doing this, Scott? Do you do pretty well?
I do okay. I mean, it's been the difference between.
He's lying to you. He does better than okay.
The difference for me, and what people have to realize is that there's a lot of expense associated with this tournament too. Camping, food, gas. It all. So when you're for me, I'm dialed in on 1,000 fish. Mm-hmm. If I can do 1,000 fish a tournament, I can make a little bit of money after expenses, et cetera, et cetera. And that's my goal every year. Now, if I get 1,600 fish and I end up with a $12,000 check at the end of the drawings and
there's a lot of other things you can enter besides just fish. Yes,
you got tagged fish that are worth from $100 up to $10,000 that you can turn in. You have drawings. You have all kinds of different ways that they throw money at you.
Yeah, and they do
all that up at the end, and you can cover expenses and make a little money. That's really where it is.
Yeah, and you never know when you're going to be out there fishing and you pull in a $10,000 tagged fish.
And there's been 3 of them caught.
Yeah, and that's a thrill.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, wham, one fish changes the whole world. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this, folks, but the best way is to just get started. Yep. Get out there and go have some fun and do this. And imagine if you can end up going out there and fishing every day, doing what you love, and you end up breaking even where it didn't even cost you any money.
You're ahead.
That's a heck of a deal.
Yep.
I mean, how many people get to do that? Plus, depending on which spouse kind of controls the checkbook, it's a way to kind of explain why it's important to be out there every single day.
Yeah.
Well, that's always the joke in our house. We've got a 30-foot fifth wheel that we pull up there because Cindy's running the tournament, but it's kind of a joke between her and I. If I'm laying there and the alarm clock goes off and I don't get up right away, she says, "You going to get up?" And I said, "I think I'll just rest a little bit this morning." She said, "You get up and get to work right now." So,
darn, I got to go fishing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So And it's
Yeah,
the
but
same.
he does the same thing to me. See, he just moves that right to me because I'm down at the ramp, and he'll come walking down there, and we'll all start talking. He'll just shut up and go to work. And then he'll
and
back
it's
my
the
boat
same
in.
thing. We get out on the lake, and somebody shows up late, and you're pointing at him and say, "Hey, you're late for work."
You're late for work. We're docking you. And do you guys communicate on the radio back and forth? Do you
No.
talk it? No. Once
We
you're
might
out
call
there,
each other on the phone.
On the phone?
Yeah, the phone is kind of replaced the radio, basically.
Yeah.
I suppose it has. Yeah.
One thing that's very important that you need to realize that we're talking camaraderie and we're talking about fishing and all that. But the most important thing to remember here is these guys are all there and they have your back. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been times when he has literally saved my life. That's another whole story. But
Wow.
we're there for each other. We're in competition, but we're there for each other. When weather gets bad, we're talking to each other. Cindy's emailing us saying we got lightning in the area, whatever. We know who's out there, like he said. We know who's on Black. We know who's on Finley. We know who's out there on Rocky. We know whatever. We know, but we also know when it really gets tough, it's time to see where everybody's at and make sure everybody
gets home
gets back
safe.
in. That's critical because more important than this fishing thing is that we're safe.
Exactly. Now, as far as, and I'll let you guys go. You spent a lot of time here with me, but as far as places to stay, stuff like that, does a campground take reservations up there at Blue Bay? How, you just go and
You show up and there's a box at the gate. We call it the gatehouse. You'll see it. It's pretty standard operation. You fill out a little envelope and you take the tab off and you put your
kind of
money.
your standards, like most state campgrounds, stuff like that.
Right, and you can get a yearly pass as
okay.
well for the boat ramp and stuff. And if you're in a camp spot in the campground, you get to have a spot in the marina. It's going to be a little different this year because I don't know if we're going to have to pull boats or if we're going to be able to stay there. I was out there a couple of days ago.
Depends on the water level.
It's 2.5 feet low, so it's going to be a little bit of a grind to be able to tie up
I
in the
think we're
marina.
going to be right into the spring thing where we got to load and unload every day.
Unload. Well, that's kind of typical for a lot of tournaments anyway. So
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people are
It
used
isn't
to
anything
that.
we can't do. It's just an inconvenience.
Sure. Does the campground usually fill up for fall Mack days?
No, this year's different because it closed. It's only open for Mac days. And
After
there's-
Labor Day weekend.
Right. And then they're doing some work. So there's limited spots. There's plenty of non-electrical spots and things like that down on the lower side. It doesn't fill up. There's normally the same 5 or 6, 7.
Are there
rigs
other
in it.
campgrounds near there that a person could use? Because I know fall can be a bit of a challenge for campgrounds. Are there others around?
I don't know what they're doing at Yellow Bay.
Yeah, there's some guys that stay there, but they just kind of live in the parking lot. It's a kind of a dry camp thing because there's no hookups there. It's basically a tent only camping area, but they're a little bit flexible with and that's a state campground there, and then you can go up to Wayfarers and they have a real nice campground.
Yeah,
there. But
Wayfarers
if the
very
water's
nice,
low, that's their boat ramp is not nearly as nice as Yellow Bay or Blue Bay. There's some guys that come up from the Bitterroot and just fish the tournament days, which is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They just get a motel or they've got a camper that they stay at.
They have friends
Someplace
on the
close.
lake or whatever.
Yeah, and there's fantastic hotels to stay in and stuff like that. So, and for some of you that live fairly close to Flathead, just make it a day trip and you're back. So, lots of different ways there. I'll put some links in the podcast descriptions for the state campgrounds and stuff like that for those of you that have never done it, so you can get a little information on where to stay and all that. And Blue Bay, the best place to put in, do you think?
Well, it kind of depends. If you're staying there, like I say, I think they have a $10 charge for the ramp. But if you have a spot in the campground, that covers that.
That's included. Okay.
Right. If you just come in there to launch every day, I think it's $10.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're in the campground and we're staying there, I like Blue Bay just because it's a really nice campground. For me, it's probably as nice as anything on the lake for what we're doing because the headquarters are at Blue Bay, so
Sure.
it's convenient.
As far as with this lower water, how are the boat ramps, say, down around Polson and that? Can you put in there still, or?
You know, I don't know the answer to that because I haven't really gone down to like Salish Point there in Polson to see what that looks like. But usually by the end of the fall tournament, that water is down to where it's at right now. So, you know, it's getting a little sketchy about if we're going to be able to stay in the marina. But
I don't know about Big Arm either. I mean, over there.
I'll do a little research and I'll put some information down in the podcast description
this
too.
lake
And
being this low is a little bit of a challenge around the lake for long.
So it's going to be a little different dynamic for us this year. And you might just call the state and ask them because they've got campgrounds all around the lake.
Exactly.
So
yeah. And that link for the state campgrounds, I'll have in there for you. And do check before you decide on where you're going to go and where you're going to put in. Just do check because I don't want you to get way up somewhere and realize you can't use that. So,
I think also a point of emphasis is that they have pickup spots on the lake every night. And that stuff is on the website, so you don't necessarily need to camp at Blue Bay to turn your fish in. You can be up the east shore or over on the west shore if you camp somewhere and just find out where those spots are. There's probably 4 or 5 of them.
They pick up from Big Arm, then go on up into Summers and all that. They have times that they're there.
They have a regular schedule.
Okay. Well, it's mackdays.com. That's MackDays.com. Mackdays.com. That website gets you a ton of information. You can also see who's leading. Hopefully, we'll see these two gentlemen's names on the leaderboard as it goes along. Mack Days, Fall Mack Days starts September 14th and goes through November 12th. And remember, you don't have to fish every day. You can come and go as you want in the tournament. Get out there and have some fun. You guys, thank you very much for coming on and spending so much time with me and helping us. And you may be getting a few emails I'll be sending your way from listeners that have some questions.
Sure.
So
no problem.
All right. Folks, get out there and take the family or take your best buddy, your wife, whomever, or go solo. Get to Mack Days and get out there and fish with these guys. And who knows, maybe you take home a pile of cash. We'll keep you posted on it. Until then, thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast and enjoy the great outdoors, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.